Here we are at the workbench about ready to start our gumball machine. We have our plan. We have a board here. This board is a 1x6. As you remember, a 1x6 thickness is actually 3/4 of an inch thick, and instead of being 6 inches wide, it is 5.5 inches wide. And the board we have here, the overall length is right around 30 inches. Our first step with this board is we want to lay out our largest two pieces first. Our top and bottom are the 5.5 inches wide by 6 inches long. They're both 6 inches long. 6 inches plus 6 inches is 12 inches. I'm going to give myself an extra 1/2 inch for sanding, getting the thing square. So we're going to mark 12.5 inches. Then we're going to take our square. We're going to transfer that line all the way across. Remember, when you use a square, the base goes up against your project, and then we slide the base on our project. We're going to bring the blade to our pencil mark. So I'm going to put my pencil right on my mark, put my base up against my project, slide the blade until it hits my pencil. That way I know that my pencil is right on my mark when I scratch my line across. Now, if I cut right on that line, I know I have enough material for my top and my bottom, plus a little bit of extra. So I'm going to cut right on that line. The other side of the project here. So this side of your project, that is going to be for your front, your back, and your two sides. And then on top, we're going to cut this. We're going to cut off 1.5 inches. That is going to be your slider and your bridge. So we're going to get top, bottom, front and back, our two sides, our slider, and our bridge, all from this one board. The ramp and the ramp sides, we'll pull those from different material. The ramp I already have pre-made for you. The ramp sides you have to cut to size, and I already have the two little dowels cut to length. So right now, we're going to separate this board. I'll have my top, bottom, and then we'll cut this later on the table saw to remove the slider and the bridge from our front, back, and sides. I have my top and my bottom cut out here. Now we're going to go ahead and lay out our project. This edge is square. We can check it using our square. Hold the base up tight against your project, bring the blade over, and you can see that it's even all the way across. We check the side. It is square. This side is also the factory cut side, so that is trustworthy that it is square. We have to measure off of a square edge. If you try measuring off of a saw cut, chances are that saw cut is not square. So we're going to be off with our measurements. So we have to make sure we're measuring off of a square edge. Our top and our bottom are both 6 inches long. So I'm going to measure over 6 inches, make a dot. Take the square, pencil on the dot, bring the square up to it. Again, biggest mistake here is students don't hold the square tight against the project. Make sure it is tight so when you scribe this line, it stays square. Now we're going to go back to the bandsaw. I'm going to cut just barely here on the scrap side because I need this to be 6 inches. That is very, very important. So I'm going to cut just ever so barely down this scrap side of the line. I want to be able to see that line yet, so when I take it to the sander and sand it square, I can see where to sand to. You don't want to saw that line off because then your project is short. Back from the bandsaw, this was our square edge. Here is the line we just scribed. Here is my saw cut. As you can see, we can just barely see that line. That way when I sand, I don't have a lot to sand off, so I can sand it pretty quickly to my line. This is that scrap piece. Now we need to make another, let's say if this one's my top, this one's going to be my bottom, so I need to make it exactly the same. But right now I don't have a square edge. These are both bandsawed edges. So first thing we have to do is create a square edge. And if I can, I want to try to remove that knot, and I'm not going to be able to. So we're going to square up this edge here first. So just using that square again, hold the base tight, scratch a line here. We don't want to have to sand forever. So I just have a sliver of wood showing, take my pencil and scratch across that sliver. So I have just a little bit showing to sand to. Again, not going to take much time sanding this. I'll take this to the sander. I will sand both pieces. I'll sand this piece and that piece to the line, and then we'll come back and measure the length on this one to get to size. Now I have my projects. This one is sanded to 6 inches. It is finished. This one I have one edge sanded square so I can measure off that square edge. Just to make sure I sand this square, what we can do is take our square and double check. Hold it up to a light. If you see a sliver of light underneath there, you know it's not square. Here on the bench, I'm going to do a little bit differently. Got a piece of white paper behind it. And as you can see, you don't see any sliver of light in between the square and the block of wood. So we know it's square. We know both edges are square. And we have it to 6 inches. So that project is done. Put your name on it so somebody else doesn't take it, and write what project this is. I'm going to call this one my top. It doesn't matter. We're going to make a top and a bottom. Let's make one of each. If yours does have markings on it like this, this is a factory stamp, write your name on that side. If I was a little bit more paying attention, I would have put my name and the top on this side. That means it would have been less sanding on this side. Not a big deal. We have to sand the side anyway, so we'll just sand those pencil marks out. This one here, this block, I have squared off. Now I can measure off that square edge over our 6 inches. Squared across with our square. Now, if we took this over to the belt sander and try to sand off that much material, it'd take forever and it'd plug up my belt. So what we're going to do is we are going to take it over to the bandsaw first. We're going to saw off a little bit of waste here, get really close to that line again, and then sand the line. The less you have to sand, the faster the job will get done. But always leave material to sand, otherwise your project's going to end up small. These two should be identical when they're done. I'll take this to the bandsaw, cut it. I'll take it to the sander, sand it square to my line, and then I will be back. But now I'm going to work on cutting my slider and my bridge off of my front, back, and sides. I want to try to avoid this knot if I can. So when I cut off my 1.5 inches, I'm going to cut my 1.5 inches off of right here to try to get rid of that knot. Again, it's going to be a good idea to get rid of that knot if you can. We are going to use a table saw to split these two parts apart. The table saw can be an intimidating tool, so if you don't feel comfortable using it, please let me know. I will run it through, or we'll have another student run your project through the saw. We want to get you the exposure to the table saw. That way, if you see one later in life, you'll know how to use it. We're going to set our table saw up to cut a 1.5 inch strip. Cut that out first. Then we're going to set it up to cut a 3.5 inch strip. Bring this over here. So our slider is 1.5 inches, and our front and back and sides are all 3.5 inches tall. So first, cut the 1.5 off, then the 3.5s.